So I got this pack of candy cigarettes, and it's a little disappointing because I wanted the ones that's like bubble gum that you blow when you actually get smoke and then you could chew it. These are like the sticks where it's like, you just chew it. Boring. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, the Yankees continue to nosedive as we hear it in the summer months, and we've seen this before here, and fans are, doing the usual hysterics. Oh my God, fire Boone, fire Cashman, can we even settle for a wild card? What's going on with this team? Well, yes, the team is struggling there, but we'll do a kind of full litmus test of what's going on specifically with some guys. Yeah, we know Judge is hurt and Fried's out for a while, of course, so you know that. But other things going on around the team that might be causing them to, again, having this current little bit of a nosedive as they've been having as we close out June and enter July. So we'll kind of give a big picture of the whole thing and not go into the hysterics of just a couple of games there. But as mentioned before, some guys are out, such as Max Fried, Rendon, Stanton, Judge. We'll just give you updates on kind of at least somewhat of a timetable of when they might be come back and kind of what the current situation is. And of course, we've all been hearing the talk, get rid of Volpe, get rid of Wells and other stuff, make a trade, dump this guy, get this guy. As we're approaching a couple weeks away from the trade deadline, which is going to be early August there. But we'll kind of also look back at what's actually realistic there and what could probably be happening with this team there. Again, I don't see any big changes there, but again, we'll just throw out a couple of options and ideas there. And interesting enough is there's a little bit drama in Queens with Soto and Lindor. Lindor shortstop. Would that maybe be a chance for maybe Lindor to move from Queens to the Bronx there? So we'll kind of explore that as well there. So throw a lot of stuff out to you, so got a good episode. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast version of the show. So wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you get your favorite podcast, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Get my take sooner on things. You have to wait a whole week for a new episode. And of course, you're watching right now on TV on YouTube. Make sure you go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to Section 420 Talkin Yankees, get the whole thing. And of course, we all know the deal once Aaron Judge goes down, and I kind of mentioned that, yes, the Yankees are going to have to weather the storm for a little bit, but my take was that I don't think it was going to be as dreadful as we saw in years past, because this was a better team overall. I think the starting rotation was better, probably the best starting rotation technically on paper that a Judge team ever had there. And the other players around Judge, again, this has been better than past, with guys like Joey Gallo and DJ LeMahieu and so forth like that. But unfortunately, it seemed like the Yankees, initially as they kind of held down the fort without Judge, took quite a bit of a nosedive and really started with that series up in Fenway. So that was starting on June 25th. Unexpectedly get swept by the last place Red Sox there. Maybe two of those games are close there, but again, they looked kind of listless of that. And again, the losing continue afterwards to the point where at 11-game stretch, there were 2-9. And really the highlight of it was that brutal 1-5 homestand during the July 4th weekend, to celebrate George Steinbrenner's birthday, going 1-5 against teams that usually the Yankees are very successful of, Detroit, but mainly the Minnesota Twins, getting swept by Detroit, and again losing 2 out of 3 to the Twins. And that was the point where the Yankees fell 4 games behind the Tampa Bay Rays, where people were really starting to panic, and the team looked like they were clueless, they weren't scoring runs, and then of course the usual hysterics and all this stuff about fire Boone, fire Cashman. It's the same Yankees. Maybe they won't even make the postseason. Maybe Judge doesn't come back, and everyone's going crazy like that. So yeah, it's not great there, but I got a couple of things you got to worth looking at, and I kind of really pinpointed 5 areas where I think really the cause for that whole thing. I mean, obviously you watch your team is pretty obvious, but sometimes you need to just take a step back and look what's going on in the team just more than anything else there. And of course, with 2 players, mainly Bellinger and Rice, who you really needed them to pick up the slack. Now, obviously when you put Judge between those 2 guys, it benefited both of them. Even if Judge wasn't really getting off to a great start in 2026, he was still having, but for any other player, still having a good season there. So when you lose Judge's bat, the threat of Judge that's lurking there in the batting circle, or the fact that Judge is on first base with his high on-base percentage, yeah, it's going to affect some other players. But you need both Rice and Bellinger to still be better than what they are. And again, it's been pretty brutal. If you want to go back the last 15 games for Bellinger, hitting 127, and you really can't have that. No home runs at all, one RBI. So with 17 strikeouts and an on-base percentage that's even lower than Volpe's at 226. And then Rice has just been marginally better, but overall not the great start he had in April, May, and early June. Just hitting it marginally better at 164. With 4 home runs, at least he's been hitting the ball more than Bellinger, hitting home runs at least. Only 5 RBIs, 16 strikeouts, and an on-base percentage that's just marginally better than Bellinger's at 246. So, I mean, those 2 guys really need to pick up slack. Of course, you got the other role players like Trent Grisham, who's back, and Paul Goldschmidt, who was at least getting off a good start. He's cooled down a little bit, and Jazz, running to a home run here and there. But really, it was Bellinger and Rice, those two needed to be much better. They need to be much better. And, we'll get into a little bit later, but both of them, they were all-stars. So these were two all-stars that, again, really letting the team down at a time when Judge is out there. So, of course, that's one of the problems there. Second one of them, look, we all heard the story about the food poisoning. You might say, well, it's making excuses. Well, it is kind of worth saying that we don't even have a full list of who got it and what there. But, again, if you're not playing 100% there and your stomach's not good, and especially during the summer when it's hot, it's going to affect players. Now, three of them, at least we know about. One of them being Ryan McMahon. He definitely had to set a couple of games there. Now, of course, losing Ryan McMahon is not like losing Mike Schmidt in his prime there. I understand that. But it's still a good glove, and it's still, it's one less option you have for Boone, whether it's someone coming off the bench or whether it's during the game there. Not having him available for a couple games, it's going to hurt the team, and this will happen in the midst of that. Another one being Ryan Weathers, who at least his start at home against the Twins, he had to supposedly vomit multiple times during the game. So I don't know how you start a game, you try to pitch in like almost 100-degree heat in New York during the heat wave, which I'll get into there, and you're throwing up during the game there. It's going to affect you. You're probably not going to have a good start. So that's worth mentioning as well. And of course, Spencer Jones, before sending down to AAA, supposedly he had a bout as well. But they said it could have been anywhere from 7 or 8 different Yankee players had this. Now, we don't know, did it happen in Detroit because they were on that road trip from Detroit and Boston? Did a Red Sox fan kind of sprinkle something on pizza like they did to Michael Jordan in Utah? We don't know there. But again, it is worth mentioning because, again, if you're not 100% there, it's going to affect your play, whether you're a pitcher or a position player. And of course, I mentioned before, the brutal heat wave in New York. Now, that was during the July 4th, kind of that week, or first week of July there. It was like 100 degrees for like 4 or 5 days in a row there. Now, I understand both teams got to play for it, not making excuses. And, hey, these new dugouts now got air conditioning and all this stuff like that. Still, maybe half your teams had food poisoning. Now you're playing 100-degree heat. Again, it's going to affect you. Doesn't make excuses for things, but it's just the reality of the situation. And, of course, you had a couple of players leave the team for certain stretches there. Now, two of these guys were before this really nosedive happened, but one during it. And that was David Bednar going paternity leave. Okay, he's a father, having a family, good. But the fact that some of these players got to leave the team for a couple of days and come back, and the Yankees have a few of these guys, when they made the whole flip-flop with the backup catcher situation with Ali Sanchez, he had to leave the team for a couple of days to go on paternity leave. And then even before that, Ryan Weathers, several weeks before that. So when you have these guys leave the team for a few days and come back, you think, well, this goes back with somebody. Well, yeah, it does cause a disruption. You disrupt the flow there. It does have adverse effects there. So, yeah, they've been playing bad. They haven't been hitting yet, but you also have these little petty things as well. And last but not least, unexpectedly, Rendon having to go on the IL with a little elbow inflammation. Now, we'll get into the stuff a little bit later there. They did an MRI on it. Looks like there's no structural damage yet, but they did see some swelling. So for now, they're doing one of those platelet-rich plasma shots into it. He's going to still be a while. We'll get into the whole timetable with him. But again, you go down one of your big starters there. So you were going to see that coming. So you mix all these little things in there, and you understand why the team's been struggling. And so I just think it's a little situation where, yeah, they're playing bad, but they're not a bad team. So, if you didn't have these other things, if you didn't have these issues and they were just on, full system head and play and still losing, then I would say there's a problem. But the fact that you have these things during this time, I would say, okay, it's more probably these little ailments more than the team is bad. I mean, yeah, you're not going to be as good if you don't have Judge. We all know that. You'll be simple there, but I don't think they're this bad. So that's why I'm still a little bit more optimistic. This is not going to be a tremendous, colossal drop-off as we've seen in years past there. So I'll just calm down a little bit with the hysterics and that thing. I think obviously, I think the weather won't be that brutal afterwards. I think guys obviously will recover better from the food poisoning and the stomach issues like that there, and you get some guys a little back healthy. And I just think, the odds, the Yankees had a really good start to the season. A little tail down a little bit. It's ebbs and flows of the season. I think they're more of an upswing there. So again, I don't think they're gonna fall out of this whole thing and you're just crawling for that third wild card spot. I don't think the Yankees are gonna be in that boat quite yet. So just calm down a little bit now. If you want to go take this up to like the 420 level in terms of, the highest view of what's really wrong with this team, well, we all know what the problem is overall there, and we'll kind of address it afterwards. But basically, we want to just look at the lineup themselves. You have 3 automatic outs. On any given day, you have 3 automatic outs, and that's one of them being top as Wells. Hitting now 151, 4 home runs, and only 10 RBIs. It's putridly bad. I mean, he's an automatic out right now. And, of course, we know the situation with both Volpe and McMahon. You have 3 guys, just before you have the conversation started, they're automatic outs. And then you have 2 other guys who, I want to call them an automatic out, but they're pretty close to it, and that would be both Jazz and Jason Dominguez. So if you have a lineup of 9 guys you're running out there for the normal part there, 5 of those 9 guys are pretty much an automatic out. So you couple that with the fact that Rice and Bellinger aren't doing well, aren't performing well right now in a bad stretch, and you don't have Judge and stuff. All that stuff get magnified there. So that's really the big issue level there. And the Yankees just get hit a lot of these things at once. Cole scuffling for a little bit while. His first 2 starts looked brilliant. It's like, wow, he picked up. But after that, he struggled a little bit. Had one good start at home against Minnesota. Okay, you would hope eventually that's not going to last too long. The vintage Cole should come back. I would bet more on that than anything else there. And of course, Rondon goes down for a while, which you didn't expect there. Again, he was kind of starting to roll a little bit there. So you just have these little knick-knack things that hit the Yankees all at once there. So I would just sort of just like calm down a little bit. I think at some point those pieces would come back. Still some big questions regarding Judge and Stanton, all that stuff on big picture there. But some of these little side things that have been going on during this little stretch there, I think those will correct themselves and these guys will get back. I think Cole will pitch much better there. And of course, after we saw, Schlittler get knocked around a little bit in Boston, which is more of having bad defense behind him, if anything else. But look, had a bad start, but he came right back with a strong start, and that was that game, first game against Tampa there. So I would just calm down a little bit. Once these pieces get back there, I think the Yankees will be okay. I'm not going to say guaranteed American League East champions. I still think it's going to be a dogfight with Tampa, but we've seen Tampa, get off to a great start, and they took a big nosedive for a while, and the Yankees swooped in there. So I would just say calm down the temperature a little bit. But with a little brighter news, the Yankees will be sending 4 All-Stars to Philadelphia for the All-Star game. Now, of course, maybe 2 out of the 4 All-Stars won't even play in the game, but I guess, worth announcing, nevertheless. And of course, no brainer, no shocker there, Aaron Judge, but of course that's by the vote only there, which you figure was going to happen, even though he's been gone for the past month and a half there. But again, at least he'll be there. I guess just his face there, but of course he can't play in the game, still hurt there. Cam Schlittler for his first time of his career, and this is a guy again. He came up kind of mid-season last year. Obviously wowed us in that game against Boston there, and again has had a tremendous first half, and of course well deserving of it. Now the only problem with him is we don't know his throw day, in terms of his what game he's going to play right before the first half of the season ends there. Is he going to line up to be able to pitch in that game? So possibly he might be able to pitch in there, but he possibly might not. Obviously everyone's thinking this with his numbers there, that if he is available to pitch, he should start the game. Very well may possibly happen, but again, it's 2 to be announced, and who knows, maybe his quad hurts or his tricep hurts before, and they have to yank him there. So not a guarantee to play the game, but at least he's named to the All-Star. But 2 players who would probably definitely at least get 1 or 2 at-bats there will be both the 2 players we mentioned that are struggling right now, and that's both Cody Bellinger and Ben Rice, who, again, over the past 2 or 3 weeks haven't looked like All-Stars. But again, Ben Rice was getting off to a really great start to the season. It was kind of fun, him and Judge kind of going back and forth with the home runs, and people kind of whispering, hey, Ben Rice, maybe the American League MVP possibly. So that's why you don't want to call those things too soon. But overall, again, we wanted just to minus the past couple of weeks there, both of them well-deserving there, and he's going to have to wish him the best of luck there. And again, it would be nice just to see Aaron Judge in that game because, this is just, it's a worldwide audience. I think there's more than America there, and just to have him in the big game there against Ohtani and stuff would be cool, but unfortunately, Judge is going to have to sit this one out. But getting back to Yankee business, the Yankees are going to be down a couple of lefties for a while. As mentioned, Carlos Rodon, freshly going on the IL with the elbow inflammation. Again, they gave him the PRP, that's the plasma-rich platelet shot that they had to shoot up into Stanton's wrist last year. Using on his elbow now, and it looks like a week or 2 before he's really started throwing program. So, I want to look at the month of July, realistically. Maybe you don't see them until the end of July or early August at best there. But again, a little also good news regarding Max Fried with that. Finally, as again, he's been out for a while with the bone bruise on the elbow. So during that Minnesota series at home, the Friday game, before the Friday game, threw a bullpen session of 36 pitches, reported no injuries or aches afterwards. And then a couple days later, threw some live batting practice to a couple of Yankee players. Again, also reporting no issues there. So positive side for him. Still ways to go there. So they want him to actually throw a couple more batting practice sessions there, and then after that they'll map out a plan of what they want him to do. I'm assuming 2 or 3 starts, either AAA, AA, kind of what they did to Cole. I don't think he's going to need to be ramped up as much as Cole needed to be ramped up. It seemed like Cole was like in the minors forever there to finally get him back in the Bronx there. I don't think Fried will take as long there, but you could probably look at least 2 or 3 at a minimum rehab starts. So then in terms of a timetable, again, a situation where probably comes back sometime in August at best if everything works out. And of course, Ryan Weathers, not having to go on the IL, but of course I mentioned before, he was dealing with the food poisoning. Again, had that good start in Detroit there. Must have got afflicted by it, and then again had the bad start during the home series there. So you would at least hope at some point maybe gets that out of the system. Then Yankees can have their lefties back. And again, Yankees starting pitching. it hasn't been good as the start of the season. They haven't been, the main part of it have been struggling. But again, you also see some guys like Will Warren who, before you had a blink, had 7 wins there. But of course, he's been struggling a little bit there. And Garrett Cole, again, as I mentioned before, after 2 good initial starts since coming back there, has struggled a little bit. But, at least at some point, and it's kind of frustrating because you figured we'd have these, all these guys at once with Cam Schlitt rolling there. And you figure, the AL East would be a cakewalk there. But you see how these guys are down. But there seemed at least to be some sort of window by, and I'm just always try to be optimist, sometime by August, September, that time frame there. And I know that's, when you're going through the stretch run trying to make the playoffs there, but at some point, again, anything else, no shoe other shoe drops, you could have all these 4 guys in the rotation there, and it's kind of good timing. The Yankees kind of make a bit of run, get some momentum going to October again. But of course, that's all a best case scenario. And a player who's been kind of like missing for a while. We put his face on the milk carton. We've just contacted the FBI. We filed a missing person report, and that's on Giancarlo Stanton, who's, again, been gone for pretty much, since April there. Now, the latest from Boone there that he expects him to be back at some point. I mean, at least what Boone says, at least kind of gives you an idea with Fried and Judge of when they'll be back. Stanton is at some point. So it could be almost the last week of September. We don't know there. Now, as other players are kind of doing drills like batting practice and fielding, stuff like that, Stanton is working the treadmill. So he's getting like $20 million a year just to walk on. He's not even running on the treadmill. He's walking on the treadmill. So he's getting the treadmill working. That's positive for him. But I just feel the Yankees are just doing load management, kind of with with just do a Kawhi Leonard in the NBA. He wasn't cool with the whole 82 games of a regular season. Want to do that? Kind of just save him just for the playoffs. And they would do that with Greg Popovich and Duncan during the Duncan Spurs championship years. Kind of give Duncan's a 20 million days off there and keep him fresh for the postseason. So Yankees are probably doing a little bit with that Stanton. And I have a feeling this cannot be a right calf situation only. I mean, all this time just for a right calf. How bad can that be? They tell him don't run, just walk there. So I have a feeling maybe those wrists are bothering again. We may have some other ailment that they're covering of it. We don't know there. But again, according to Boone, he'll be back at some point there. So, don't hold your breath. And this kind of leads to the fun part of the episode, which is going to be the cold trade talk, where you hear fans complaining, like, get rid of this guy, fire this guy, let's trade for this guy, let's go get this guy. It's kind of some of these, it's a reason to call into the talk radio stations there. And it kind of makes it fun there. Now, most of these proposals and ideas are completely ridiculous there, you understand, but it is kind of fun. But it's always worth exploring because the Yankees are probably going to have to make some moves there now. Overall, take a step back. I don't think they're going to make any tremendously big moves. And as I mentioned before, a lot is going to be hinted on Judge's returning or not. If there's a situation where they figure Judge can't return this season there, so I don't think they're going to make any sort of moves if they don't feel like Judge is going to back to the team, because I just can't. The team possibly could win a wild card spot if even without Aaron Judge there. But going the whole way, even though Judge is historically struggled in the postseason, he's still a presence there. So I think if there's no Aaron Judge in the equation, I just don't think they're going to do anything much there just because of that. And of course, got the potential, which we haven't discussed much here on Section 420 Talkin Yankees, whether on the audio podcast or here on the TV or YouTube channel there. But we also have a potential lockout for next year. So that kind of, in terms of what salary cap's going to be, what a budget's going to be, are the Yankees going to bring on more salary, just not knowing what the situation is going to be there. So the fact that black cloud is hanging over their head too, I just don't think the Yankees are going to bring in a ton of budget or bring in some big name players that they don't know what the money situation is going to be for next year there. So if you're expecting worldwide changes there, you're going to be disappointed. If you want to make some proposals, go ahead and knock yourself out, but it's not going to happen. So we'll get into the players for a second there. And it kind of at the top, I kind of mentioned, the kind of holes in this lineup. And of course, if you watch this team, you know what the holes are in this lineup, and you know what the ills are of the problem. A couple in the bullpen as well there. But let's go to the 2 ones with Cashman and Boone. There's going to be no firing of Boone and Cashman. This is not going to happen. First of all, let's go with Cashman. I mean, he is the Yankees. He's not just the GM. He's like pretty much the master of all operations. Hal just kind of sits in his office, whatever Hal does all day, we don't know there. But Hal's just not going to get rid of Cashman. I mean, Cashman is kind of the octopus and has his tentacles into like everything of the Yankees operations. You just don't fire something like that just because we're second place in the American League East. Firing Cashman is not going to reverse every move he made and sort of bring in a big name player. It's just not going to happen. So the whole idea is ridiculous. Probably what's going to happen with Cashman, whatever current contract he's under, they'll probably let that run out. And at that point, even Cashman might just walk away after like almost 30 years of being the Yankees general manager. Who knows? But they're not going to fire him in the middle of the situation. And first, you have the draft coming up. As you know, you kind of need Cashman to do the draft there. And of course, you have the trade deadline, Cashman to make the moves. You're not just going to rip him out and have someone else just do that. It's just not going to happen. So just put that dream out of your head. And as for firing Aaron Boone, there's really no reason to do it. Okay, let's say they fire Aaron Boone. Who are you going to get? What are you going to do? You're going to promote Brad Ausmus. Brad Ausmus is not going to just magically make Wells turn into like Thurman Munson or Johnny Bench or Ivan Rodriguez in his prime there, or Mike Piazza in his prime there. He's not going to turn Anthony Volpe into Derek Jeter all of a sudden there. So just getting rid of Boone and just promoting Brad Ausmus, it doesn't do anything. And who else are you going to bring back? Hey, Posada. He was a good coach manager for the Italy team there, and he looked tough and he looks okay. Maybe down the road that's something you could look at potentially, possibly. But you're not going to find Aaron Boone and put Jorge Posada in there like something like that. It's just not going to happen there. And I just think that will cause more problems than it will create there. I think it will cause us a lot of conflict in the clubhouse, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of nervousness. And this seems Boone, even though it does make some. I'm not saying he's perfect there, but it seems like the team has his back. He has their back. Judge likes Boone. Seems Cole likes Boone. They're just not going to, unless there's some sort of upheaval or revolt going on in the clubhouse there. I just don't see them trying to push Boone out. Now it seemed like Girardi did get pushed out there, mainly because they said, well, it's time for a change of voice. But the situation. Gary Sanchez wasn't a big fan of Aaron Boone. Chapman didn't like. Gary Sanchez was a fan of Girardi. Chapman didn't like Girardi. Some other players seemingly didn't like Girardi. Seemed he was a bit too tough and too hard on them. So you can see kind of Girardi was pushed out. I just don't see them wanting to push Boone out because he's kind of the opposite of Girardi there. And you might say, well, he doesn't hold players accountable and stuff like that. Maybe does, maybe does. We don't see what goes behind closed doors. The big picture, though, is they're not going to get rid of fire Aaron Boone unless they lose 15 games in a row and the clubhouse is in complete disarray and he's lost control of the team and they lost their confidence. Maybe that could happen, but I just don't see that happening because they're not that bad where that's going to happen to begin with. So for starters, for the rest of 2026, you're going to get Brian Cashman, you're going to get Aaron Boone, so just live over that. Don't even bother calling in to say to fire the manager. It's just not going to happen, so pipe that out of the way. As for the players, obviously, again, a lot's going to hinder on Judge there. Now, it's two ways you can look at it. You can say, well, you know what, Aaron Judge, he usually doesn't hit in the playoffs anyway, so who cares if he's in this team or not? Let's just get to the playoffs one way or another because Aaron Judge didn't hit in the playoffs. So you could have that line of reasoning and look at the money you committed to guys like Stanton still in contract. He's paying a lot of money to Fried. You're paying a lot of money to Carlos Rendon. You're paying a lot of money to some other guys there. And he's like, hey, you know what? You can't. If you have a chance to do something in the postseason, you got to take that chance with or without Judge. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that look, this team without Judge would have no shot in the postseason. So there's no reason to make any monumental move. So this depends where you go with that one. Because again, Aaron Judge, is not exactly a great clutch postseason player up to this point. At some point, I think that's going to happen to him the way it eventually happened to A-Rod there. So but that is there's two ways they have to consider it. But I'm just going to side with the fact that Judge probably does return sometime this season there. It is possible that he re-aggravates himself or he's not he hurts himself again and they got to yank him out. It is possible there, but I'm going to lean more that they feel he is going to come back there. So let's just operate under there. And so what moves can you make there? And I mentioned the four players are almost an automatic out. You got Wells, Volpe, McMahon, and Jazz. Okay, two of those players, McMahon and Jazz. McMahon's making $11 million, plus he's signed through 2027. For $11 million, he's going to play. I mean, they're not going to just say sit on the bench or just go home, cut him a check just to go home. It's not happening. And could they package him in some deal for something? But no one's going to want McMahon. Like, he is what he is. He's pretty much an automatic out. He runs into a home run once in a while, but he gives you pretty close to gold glove defense at third base, which you kind of need defense there. So chances are they're not going to move him. He's going to stay. As for Jazz, he's having a disappointing season overall. Guys, we know he has a raw talent. We know he's got pop. He runs into a home run once in a while. He got speed on the bases. Overall, good defense, strong on them. But, of course, little silliness with the lollipop in the mouth and all the antics and getting picked off bases sometimes there. But let's just look at his financial situation. He's making $10 million. So, yeah, half the season's over there. But the Yankees aren't just going to say, all right, go home, sit home, and we're going to get rid of you. And we'll keep paying the rest of your $10 million. It's not going to happen. Now, he is entering free agency, so you probably don't have to deal with him after this year. But McMahon and Jazz aren't going anywhere. They're both making about $11, $10 million a year. You're not going to pay those guys just to sit on the bench. So that's not happening. So in terms of what else could happen around baseball, you look at the catcher situation with Wells. It's pretty brutal. I just think, just based on tradition, they're going to be stubborn. They figure, hey, look, we developed Volpe, we developed Wells, and at some point it's going to click in. I don't know. It's maybe some point they pull the string on that, but I just think they're going to be stubborn to stick with those guys because they've been doing that for the past couple of years. I don't see them changing that. And in terms of what can you do at the catch position, everyone's talking about Goodman from Colorado. Yeah, it's great numbers there, and yeah, Colorado's out of it, and they don't really have no motivation. But they have him under control, and he's like they're one good player. Like they're not going to be in a rush to help the Yankees. So if Goodman's under control, they're not going to look to get rid of him unless the Yankees is blown away to an insane package deal. I just don't see that happening there. So they're not going to look to move him. And, you look at someone like Contreras from Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee is one of the best teams in baseball. They also have World Series aspirations. They're not going to trade a great hitting catcher to the Yankees just to help the Yankees because they have their own situation there. So you're not going to get an A-plus, great hitting, Mike Piazza type of catcher in his prime coming to the Yankees. That's not going to happen there. So what can you do around baseball? You got to find a team who's kind of out of it and has a player who maybe contract is up and has some decent numbers. At least you don't want to bring in someone here who's going to hit 215 because if Wells hits like even if Wells hitting under 2, if you bring his replacement here that only hits 210, you're not really helping yourself marginally. It's just not worth doing it. So who can you get just throwing around a random player? If you want to look to Arizona, you got Gabriel Moreno. Now, Arizona right now, they're 45-45, which is right. Well, they're 500 there. So that's the first problem. Yes, they're 14 games behind the Dodgers at this point, and there's probably no way Arizona's going to get the NL West there. But they might be a wild card team. They probably do see the wild card team, and there's a lot of parity, not only in American League, but National League Baseball. So they're probably going for a wild card spot. So they're not going to give up a good hitting catcher. So that's the first problem. That this is not going to happen. But just to throw it there for the sake of throwing it out there. So Moreno right now, hitting 286, which would be way better than Wells, 6 home runs, 29 RBIs, and has an OPS of 801 there. So that's someone that would be a drastic improvement over what Wells is giving you. And he's entering arbitration next year there. So, they might be, right now he's making a little bit over $3 million there. So he would get a pay raise. So maybe Arizona would be looking to get rid of him, a guy who's probably going to be making more than $3 million. So that's the guy who at least would have a motivation to sell off. But would they sell him off to the Yankees? I just don't see it happening. Like I mentioned before, they're a 500 team. They do got a shot. Again, the National League, American League aren't really strong. So that wild card, those last 3 spots are going to be open there. So if they're going for it, they're going to stick with the catches. So that's why I just think he's out of play. And if you look at a team like the Marlins, who we're used to them being horrible, they're not really that horrible. They're 7 games over at 49-42. So their catcher, Liam Hicks, it takes him out of play because they're probably going for it as well. They all probably think, hey, we got a shot. Why not? So there's not many teams that are going to be looking to give up the catches. So the fact that you can snap your thumbs and get someone, the only way maybe you want to look possible, which I don't think would happen, but if you want like Francisco Alvarez from the Mets, now the Mets are totally out of it. They might be looking to unload pieces and they would want some prospects. So that's possible. But, Alvarez, marginally maybe better than Wells, but is that even worth making the move? I don't think so. So that just leads me to believe that pretty much, I think more than likely, they're going to stick with the Wells Sanchez thing there to the end, right to the end. And maybe during the offseason, once you had a chance to take a step back with the whole thing, all right, maybe they'll make some move then, but possibly. But there's not really too many great catches out there to get there. Now, the shortstop situation interesting. Let's get back to the Mets is Francisco Lindor. Now, we've heard, obviously, all the drama between him and Soto, and then Francisco Lindor is not happy in there. That's kind of why the team struggled last year and struggled to start this season. Now, there would be an actually interesting situation for both sides. Now, Alvarez, he's signed through the 2031 season, in which he will be 37 years old. They owe him a lot of money, so there would be motivation for the Mets to unload him. So that's one thing you got to look at. Plus, I'm sure the Mets would like to kind of get rid of that rift. If there is a Soto-Lindor rift in the clubhouse, to move Lindor out. Obviously, Soto is their future for now, unless Soto opts out there. So there's motivation for the Mets to get rid of him. There's motivation for the Yankees to take him on there because the Yankees could use, I would say, even if Lindor is hurt this season with the calf there, he would be an upgrade over Volpe there, but you are running that risk. So right now, he's hitting 216 with 4 home runs and 10 RBIs, but he is an injury risk. The Mets can't play him consecutive days because they're worried about this leg there. So, that would be a possibility the Yankees will explore. The problem is, though, you're taking on that contract. You got him now for the next 5 years. And again, as we know, he's 32 now. You can say he's still in his prime there, but you're stuck with the guy for the next 5 years. So for the short term, I don't think that's a good move for the Yankees. The Mets might want to make that move, but then, of course, the Yankees would have to maybe ask the Mets to eat some of that contract. So that's something that maybe both sides would explore. So that's the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you stay cool this summer there. Make sure to subscribe to the audio podcast version of the show, Section 420 Talk Yankees, wherever you get your favorite podcast. If you're watching on TV and watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you next time.